Your journey can only begin when the self-doubts stop. The first step is harnessing your bravery within. Believing in you is your host, Sean Dumas.
Hello and good day to you all. My name is Sean, and I'd like to thank you for tuning into another Persevering as an Introvert episode of Bravery Within. I wanted to take a few seconds again to always say thank you so much for tuning into my podcast. Without you guys listening in, there really isn't much need to do a podcast. But I wanted to say thank you anyway and let you know that I'm very, very grateful for you tuning in, your comments, your suggestions, your sharing of the episodes. It's incredible. You guys are amazing out there. Everything continues to grow. We're cruising right along. The YouTube page is growing quite quickly. I'm shocked in how fast it's going. And hopefully you're enjoying a little bit more now that they have pictures and comments and suggestions and that roll across the screen and not just a black screen. It takes quite a while to do that. So I'm hoping that you guys enjoy it and it's worth your time there to tune in and kind of watch. So what I wanted to go through today was I've had actually a lot of conversations about can introverts be a good manager? And one thing that they never really understood was when they were asking that question and we were having a debate or talking about it, they didn't realize that they were talking to an introvert themselves as a manager. I can operate as an extrovert when needed. I'm not quite sure how I do it or why I do it. But I know I do it. And I think that's what throws most people for a loop, because once they find out that I'm an introvert, they go, no, you're a people person. You talk to people. You're open. You're always joking and smiling. Well, you can put on the face that's necessary there to get through it while you're in management. And I've always kind of found it a little bit comfortable with, and this is probably not the right way of looking at it, but I've always found it just to be a little bit comfortable when people don't know who I truly am. There's always a misconception, or they don't quite know what to make of me. They think they have me figured out, but they really don't. I've always found that very safe and very comforting, and I think that's also another introvert thing. It's just basically it's a protection wall thing. It's to keep yourself safe. But in all the debates that we've had and the talks that I've had over, like I said, I've been in management for over 30 years. And one of the biggest debates that I've had with them is, can introverts do management positions? Well, I'm here to tell you I did it for 30 years, and yes, we can. So episode 3 today is all about introverts and management. I wanted to try to clear up some of the misconceptions. Not every introvert is going to be good in management. It's just like every extrovert is not going to be good in management. That's just the way it is. Not everybody wants to be in management. Not everybody wants to lead the people. It's a whole different thing. But I've got 30 years of experience in management of running businesses, owning my own business, all of these things, and I've learned so much over the years. And it doesn't matter how much you know and how much you learn, you're always constantly learning. And I think that's one good thing is, and you're going to hear me refer to this throughout the whole podcast, is yes, it's management, but one thing that I learned really quick, and I worked into my own management style, was I don't consider myself a manager. I consider myself a leader. And a leader is somebody that's going to be in there with their team, down in the trenches, getting the work done. I've always been the first one in, last one out to make sure that my team is taken care of. Fill in where I can, and to me there's no task too small for a leader to do. I have no problem taking out the trash or vacuuming, or and then in the next minute here I am making budgets and I'm figuring out where we're going to go for goals for the next 5 years. So that stuff that you do in management. I've just always been the hands-on type. I like to be in with my team and make sure that they understand where I'm coming from, and I'm right there with them. They're no different than me. The only difference is I'm the one that gets yelled at all the time when things go wrong, because when you're a department head or a manager, the higher management and stuff, they're going to come to you first and let you know, hey, well, you know what, you're screwing up or your team is screwing up, and then you have to go and correct the problem. But it took a long time. I didn't slide into the management position easily. When I was younger and stuff, I didn't even know what an introvert was when I first started in management. I jumped in wholeheartedly, was 18. It's like, woohoo, wow, I got some power. I got keys. It's like, ooh, get out of my way. I'm Mr. President. But I quickly learned real fast that it's like, whoa, it doesn't work that way. And the more that you try to tighten up the reins on your team, the more they're going to buck and the more trouble you have. And then I had to figure out how to learn how to talk to people that were older than me. And at the time I was 18, and I had people that were in their 60s that were working under my direction. And you have to handle them different because they're from a complete different generation. And then you got to also look at, you have their 60 years of knowledge of life and work and home and all that stuff, that if you're smart, you figure out how to basically utilize their experience. And it took me a long time. It took me years to figure out how to do all this. And I got to say that I've enjoyed at times being a manager, and then there's times there's just no fun in it. It's a really, really tough job. Everybody thinks that basically, oh, well, everybody else works, 8 to 5, so I'm going to work 11 to 2 with a 3-hour lunch break in there. I'm going to be able to take all the time off I want. I can go golfing or, swimming or whatever it is and stuff. And if you're a true leader like I am, nothing can be further from the truth. Like I said, I'm first one in, last one out, which means I'm there before everybody else is, and then everybody else goes home, and then I go home. I always made sure that things were fired up for my team. Computers were running, were working correctly. Everything was in place, money was in place. So when they came in, all they had to do is basically go to their desks and take off. Or if we were, in some of the places there, I made sure the deliveries were ready to go. They were lined up and ready to go for them. Because getting them started on the right foot helps them organize their day, and it helped me organize my day because I needed to know what we needed to accomplish that day. I sat down. When I came in, I'd answer my emails, get the questions done, answer the voicemails if I had any and stuff there, which most of the time I did. And then I would go through this is what we need to get done today. I would set up goals and I figure, okay, this is what we need to get done. So when my team came in, I made it clear to them saying, okay, this is what we've got to accomplish today, guys. I've already got you started. Things are lined up. The paperwork is sitting by the door. All you got to do is get in the truck and start delivering. While you're out and about, talk to people or see if you can drum up more business or pick up payments or whatever it was. I mean, I've been in management in several different types of businesses, and it all comes back to a lot of work. It comes back to a lot of pressure, a lot of stress. You're doing a lot of negative stuff constantly. You are trying to make things better for your team. Everybody has bad days, so you have to work through that. You have problems where they bring them in from home and they bring them into the workplace, and then they're not productive, or something's really bothering them, where say that something's wrong with the kiddos or school or the spouse or whatever it is, and you have to find a way to work through it while trying to keep production up so you can keep your bosses happy, because the only thing they see is you're costing me money or you're making me money. That's basically all they see. And I understand they have a business to run. Absolutely understand. But when it comes to introverts, we see things differently. We process things differently. We handle things differently when all's said and done. And when you break it down, honestly, I think introverts are better managers by a long shot than what extroverts are. And I've seen and I've worked with my fair share of extrovert managers, and the vast majority of them there believe that they need to yell constantly, they need to run around crazy constantly, stirring the pot. And most of your employees aren't going to respond well. There are certain jobs that they do, and those are jobs that I would never personally get into myself, and that's just an extrovert world, and you guys can have it. That's just where you flourish. That's where you feel comfortable. You go right on ahead. They do great in high-stress jobs. Me, I'm not that great at that, and I prefer to keep myself out of high-stress jobs. Because there's always something else that you've got to do as a manager. And every time, as soon as you start thinking, hey, wow, we're cruising right along, there's no problems, boom. Okay, plane went down, crash, burn, here comes 3 more problems that you got to handle. And that's one thing that the introverts have to understand is we can handle those problems. We can process it. We just need the time to get ourselves through it and set up, a game plan. But unfortunately, in management, most of the time you don't have that luxury. You got to make decisions right on the spot. So as introverts, that is actually a good thing. And let me tell you why. We are always thinking, we're always looking around, we're paying attention, we're listening, And as you're walking through, like me, as I'm always going through, is okay, what happens if this happens, or if that falls apart, or if this breaks? What is a backup to it? What is a good way of tackling and fixing this? What's a good way of, there's always, as a manager, as I was walking through my department or my store, I was always looking. You also have to look for outside. Is there ice outside? You got to make sure there's ice melt on it. Do you need to shovel snow? Do you need to make sure that the concrete that's outside that's broken needs to get fixed so somebody doesn't trip and fall and sue you? There's always so much that you have to watch for. But I think that's one thing that introverts really, really excel at, is because we really, really pay attention to everything. We watch everything. We watch people's moods. We watch their movements. We watch as things process throughout the day. I honestly think that introverts are great managers. And like I said, I've had this conversation with many, many folks before, and including other introverts, because they were offered, and it may not be a general manager position, but it could be an assistant manager or a shift manager position. But either way, you're still going into management. And I would talk to them and say, okay, you know what, folks, here, you just got to breathe here a little bit, because it is overwhelming to us. Because at this point, you're going from just basically worrying about yourself and going to work and doing things. And now all of a sudden, there's been times that I've had a crew of 40 or 50 people that have been under me, and I have to take into account, make sure they're always busy, doing what they need to do, staying on task, making the company money, not spending too much, not breaking things. There's so much there. And it's overwhelming in the beginning. Management for introverts in the beginning is extremely overwhelming. It took me a long time to figure out, okay, this is how I need to do, how I get myself through the day. How do I? There's so much going on, but make no mistake, when you really when you break it down, I would take an introvert over a manager every day. And some of the benefits that I've kind of learned throughout the years, while with my time in management and stuff, there is, I got to build up my team and make them better. I did everything in my power to always, support my team. I was always there for them. I always listened to them. I always helped them. If they would come into my office or whatever, I would stop whatever I'm doing and listen to what they needed. I never growled at them. I never talked down to them. I never made them feel bad, because if they're coming in and asking questions, they have that. There's something they need to do. But the bigger thing that I always saw with that is they trust you enough to come ask you the questions. I have been in so many jobs, and I've had so many employees that have, basically come under my management, come and gone. And so many of them would refuse to ask questions. And it drove me nuts, because nobody knows everything to every subject. It's not possible. It's just not humanly possible. And they would just go and make their own decisions, good or bad, and then go on and not worry about the consequences. Well, I'm the one that has to worry about the consequences, because if something goes wrong, I have to fix it. And if I don't know that it was broken or something is not working right, then I can't fix it. And if they're not going to talk to me, which is the basic foundation of between employees and management, is if there's no communication, chaos ensues. And I can't get that through. And I've had to explain that many times to other businesses, other people. I said, you have got to talk to me. You have got to communicate with me. Now, I'm all about letting my team make their decisions. I am not a micromanager. I am not going to be looking over your shoulder all the time. I am not going to be going through computer data to see that you are working 100% of the time. I am not that way. I've never been a micromanager, and I never will. I trust you to come talk to me. And if they are coming to talk to me and asking questions, that means they feel comfortable, and that means I'm doing my job as a leader. And then I can help them, direct them the right way, and off they go again. And one thing that I learned is my employees, my team, really responded to that, which basically leads into another thing is I feel, and I don't speak highly of myself, and you guys know this through my podcast, I'm really hard on myself, but I was an extremely compassionate and positive leader, not a manager. There's a popular misconception there. A manager, I think of it this way, a manager sits on a throne and orders everybody to do stuff while not doing anything themselves. A leader gets in there, gets dirty with his team while still managing them and getting the best out of them. You're constantly training, you're constantly working with them, you're constantly building them up, you're being positive. It's extremely rare that I was ever negative to my team, because that doesn't do anything but deter them and break their spirit, essentially, because then there's no morale, and then you can pretty well throw it out the window at that point. And it's really, really tough to get that morale and that trust back once you've broken it like that. It's almost impossible to get your employees to trust you again. Another thing that I liked about it is I could hire the people that would work well with my personality and my management style. Not every employee is going to work for me, and I've had my fair share of them. They come into the interview, they interview well, they talk well, they laugh. We exchange jokes, we get to know each other a little bit, and then they come to work, and it's like, okay, who are you? This was nothing like who you were in the interview. But I still try to work with them, because I can pretty much work with anybody, and I do my very best to, still build them up, still work with them. I still train them. I still treat them the same. I don't put one employee ahead of the other. Not at all. But there's just some of them, they just don't work. We either clash. They just feel that, I can sit on my phone and just, I can Google everything or Facebook everything or whatever they do while they're on their phone and stuff there. And it just doesn't work. So I've ended up having to let people go. But the trick is not figure out when to let them go and when not to let them go. Can you work with them? Can you bring them around? And some people they're just set in their own way, and we just don't work well. So I had to let them go. But for the most part, I was able to hire the people that I felt comfortable with, and I thought they were going to go far in the company, because I wanted to set them up to win. I wanted them to go far in the company. I wanted them to make lots of money, if it was available. A lot of the jobs didn't have lots of money. Let's be honest about it. Employers are not that great at paying their employees. But that's just the way they are. They have a business. They have a budget. They have to stick within guidelines too to keep the things going. Another thing is my team felt when they had problems, they could come and talk to me. I always maintained an open door policy. And I always wanted them to feel comfortable to come in and sit down. It doesn't matter if it was just work or if it was personal. Sometimes, the personal problems are tougher to deal with. But if you can take the time and talk to your people and let them vent, most of the time it would get it off their chest, and then they wouldn't stress about it while they're sitting behind their desks and their monitors when they're trying to work. I found that, I didn't dive in. I always kept, there was always a distance between my team and I. I mean, I didn't overly share with my team. I didn't, I was really, really careful. You always have to maintain that manager and employee level, because it keeps you, so you see, you have to make hard decisions. There's no doubt about it. And the closer you get with your employees, the harder it is to make those tough decisions, because you weigh too much in. So that's something that you have to be really careful about. And we'll cover that in a future podcast. And, because there's too much for management wise that I want to cover to do it in just one podcast. So I'll cover that in a future one. I got to reward my team when they did well and accomplished all the work necessary. I always put my team ahead of me when there's accolades and when there was awards, when there was bonuses or whatever. My team always come first. And there were times that I didn't get a bonus, and I was fine with that. My team did. There was times I didn't get raises. I took my raises and forwarded it to my team, because there wasn't that much to work with. So to tell them that they're doing the best job that I think they are, I took my raise and I gave it to them. Whatever it took to keep them happy. I mean, I bent over backwards for my team, but they had to earn it too. It wasn't just bestowed upon them that I was going to bend over backwards. You had to earn that for it. But I also did everything to allow them to earn it. I didn't hold them back. I didn't, whatever it took there to make things work. Each employee is different, and you have to handle each employee different, and you have to work with them different. You have to train them different. Even though you have one goal, you have to learn how people, some people are visual learners, some people are tactful learners, some people there are knowledge ones where you can tell them, boom, done, they can do it. There's all kinds of different ways of learning, and that's one thing as a leader that I had to figure out is each person's different. You handle each person different, and when you figure out what their quirks are, then what you can do is you can actually integrate that into work and integrate how to train them and work with them. It's amazing. You get to actually help them. You get to see them grow. It's kind of like a flower coming up out of the ground and then all of a sudden blooming. It's really, really amazing to watch these people grow and learn. It's so much fun, and that's one of the best things I think about about in management is probably one of the best things that I ever got to do in management is watch people grow, because then they get the experience and they know that they're in an environment where it's not constantly tearing you down. As when are you going to do more? When are you going to process more? When are you going to get this out the door? What are you taking so long for? Why are you breathing? Why are you taking potty breaks? I've been in those fair share of jobs, and I didn't last long in them, I'll be honest, because they didn't. They just tore you down. They just treated you like a mushroom, and they didn't share anything with you. They didn't train you. They didn't work with you. And I found that I wanted to be a better manager, a better leader than that. So I took a lot of the negatives that was, basically dumped on me, and I made sure I didn't do it to my team, and I got amazing results out of it. They were fantastic. On days, and they would tell me on days that I just don't feel like coming into work, but because you always treat us well and you're always there for us, I came in. That was the difference of, I could just say, well, I'm not coming in today. They didn't take advantage of me. They came in. Or if I needed somebody to come in, they were always there. They were amazing to work with, because there was always give and take. So when they would have a bad day, or their kiddos got sick or anything like that, then what I would do is, no problem, go. You did everything you could to help me out when I needed it. I'm going to be here to help you out when you need it. And you really build a good employee manager relationship there, and you get dedicated employees that way. They'll go a lot further. They're going to hang around, because one thing that when you hire somebody, you have to train them. And it's some of my jobs, it took months before they started feeling a little bit comfortable or just able to handle the job. When this piece of paper would run across their desk, they knew what to do with it, or this piece of paper, or what's this next step. There's so much money that's spent in training that if you don't do it right and the employees leave, that's time, that's money that is just lost, and that's all cost to the bottom line. So the more you can work with your people and build them up and help them, they're going to hang out for you, and they're going to treat you, a lot better, and they're going to be there for you. I've had some amazing team members, and I still communicate with some of these folks. They're absolutely amazing to work with, and there's times some of them will get a hold of me and ask, well, what would you do in this situation or that situation? So I would tell them, well, this is what I would do. It may not be the absolute perfect way or the right way of doing it, but this is what I would do. And they've done it. And I've had other folks tell me that they've incorporated my management style into their management style when they're working with their employees, and they say they get great results and great responses out of it. So it's learning to work with people, talk to people, and unfortunately, in this day and age of everything being text or email or voicemail or whatever it is, the human persona and element has been removed from that. There's like, just send me an email and I'll give you an answer. A good manager and a great leader is going to be out there with his team, helping them out, answering the questions right on the spot. And granted, there are some questions a manager is going to run into that, okay, I can't answer right away. I need to dig into this and I need to find out what's going on. But that should be on a rare occasion. As you're walking through with your team, you should have the answers. But no manager has all the answers. No manager has all the correct answers. And there's times that, even after 30 years, you got to go back and think about, okay, well, I got to research this a little bit, or I got to figure this way out, or what's going to be the best way. I got to consider the alternatives, the negatives, the positives. Some of the questions are big. But I always encouraged my teams to bring ideas to the table. Don't just come to me with problems. If you're going to come to me with a problem, come with a solution or two of which you think how will solve the problem. Now, granted, it doesn't always work because they may not have a solution because they're absolutely stumped. But some would come to the table and give me a solution. Now, that solution may not work because on the broad scale of everything for the whole department, the whole company, that solution wouldn't work. But to me, it meant the world that they were trying to solve the problem all the way. And I always gave them credit for it. And especially when they did have a right answer, or they had a better way of doing something or a more efficient way, I made sure that their name was at the top of the list saying, hey, this person suggested this. We should do something, either a bonus, a day off, whatever it is, just something to say thank you for doing a great job and bringing it to the table. That's all the positives and stuff there that I've taken away, and there's a lot more, and it's just there's only so much that I can say, but those are the huge keys that I've learned for the positives for the introverts being a manager. Now, the negative aspects of management that I went through, these are the parts that basically no manager likes to do. I mean, the first one obviously is firing people. That's horrible. And the longer you work with people, the harder it is to terminate somebody, because then you get to know basically their family, their kids, relatives, all that stuff. You get to know them that much more personally. So it's even harder because it's like, okay, I'm making a decision that's affecting them. So firing for me was horrible because most of the time I didn't just instantly do it. We had many conversations. We would have closed door meetings. That's another thing I hated was private meetings with employees to correct bad behavior or bad habits. And I always kept it positive. I always turned, it wasn't just to tear an employee down or anything like that. I always kept it positive. But having to deal with those negative aspects there are some of the toughest things that an introvert can do. And I think, honestly, it is the toughest is confrontation. I'm not a confrontational person. I'm a person that wants to help people, build them up, and be there for them, always in a positive light. And confrontation typically is in a negative mode, and that just goes basically against everything that I am and everything that I try to do and believe in. These things destroyed me. When I knew I was going to have to let somebody go, I would know a couple, 3 days in advance. Well, I wouldn't sleep any of those nights. My stress levels were so far above baseline, it wasn't even funny. The guilt that I felt for days after for letting them go was horrible. It took me, when I knew I was going to let somebody go, it was about a week worth of interrupted sleep. I didn't eat. I just wasn't me. And I hated that. And that's one of the biggest reasons I will not go back into management again, because I'm not going down that road. I've done it too many times. I've fired dozens of employees. I've hundreds I've hired. I just don't want to go down it anymore. I just don't like that part of it. Constant personnel problems is something that you have to deal with in management, and keeping an account with this day and age with social media and the phones and instant messaging and everything else there. Those problems have skyrocketed. And then just the way the new folks are coming up, they don't have any work experience. So then you had to try to teach them, okay, you can do this, you can't do that, and it was tough. There's no doubt about it there. I mean, the personnel problems were the part that I hated the most about the job, but you still have to do them. If you're a manager, you still have to process them. Another one was having employees simply not show up for their shifts, or they just walk out on the spot, leave you high and dry, and there's just nothing that you can do about it. Those are the ones. I didn't have many of those, but I did have a few. And all I tried to do is, while they were storming out of the building, I would just ask, why didn't you talk to me? What was going on? What? And most of the time it wasn't anything that was building. Most of the time it was just an impulse thing, is what I learned. And something at home snapped is what most of the time was. It wasn't anything at work. It was rarely that. It was most of the time it was home, personal life, and it just something snapped in their head and they just couldn't do it anymore, and they just walked out. Another thing that I've had to deal with was theft. That one's a tough one there, having to fire an employee for walking out the door there for either stealing, office supplies of all things, or money, or, I've had deposits that went completely missing. Theft is a tough one. Drunkenness. I had people come in drunk as a skunk. I mean, my goodness. I mean, it was obvious that they must have just basically fell in the gutter out of the bar and then come to work. I mean, they were just horrible. So you had to let people go for that. Being late, that is a huge, probably one of my biggest pet peeves, is if you're supposed to be to work at 8, be 5 or 10 minutes early. That's just the way that I operate. I have terminated employees for being late. They've gotten plenty of warnings. And if you can't show up and you get constantly 10, 15 minutes late, to me, 2 minutes late, it doesn't matter if you're 10 seconds late or if you're 10 minutes late. It's the same thing to me. You're late. You need to be 10 minutes early. I'm 15 minutes early to my work every day. That's just the way that's old school thinking, and I know that, but you know what? I don't get in trouble, and I don't have to worry about, am I going to make it to work, or is there going to a train that's going to be running across the road and that's going to delay me when I have no extra time, and then this is going to make me 10 minutes late. It's not the train's fault, it's your fault for being behind. So being late is a huge thing. I've had to let people go because of their body odor and bad breath. I know that sounds bad and that sounds whatever, but when you're working in the health or the food industry and stuff there, body odor, I'm sorry, but if I go up to a counter and somebody stinks and I want to order some food, I walk back out. I can't deal with that. It's just like you're ruining my appetite, and I don't want to be around that. There's plenty of products in the market anymore to control your body odor and your bad breath. Another reason is unfortunately is they're on their phones constantly. I've had to correct them for that, and I've had to release people for that as well. I mean, these are just the negative aspects, and honestly, as an introvert, these things absolutely kill me. I have a hard time with them. It's just the negative aspects, but the problem is, most of the time, 85% of the time, this is what managers deal with. It's not a matter of, running the business. I mean, you always have to do that. You always have to budgets and projections and day-to-day operations. But the hardest part, most of it is just the personal problems that people bring into work. Do they not want to work? Do they just refuse to do anything? The personnel issues and problems is the vast majority of what managers have to deal with, and that's probably, like I would guess 85% of my job is dealing with the negative issues and problems just to get the job done. And that's where managers come in, and that's what drives me teetotal and crazy, because it's like, okay, I shouldn't be sitting here telling you, you need to get your work done, you're 40 years old, it's time to grow up, it's time to get moving. And I've had to do that with folks, and I hate doing that. It breaks my heart, because this is like, I feel like I'm tearing them down, but you're not doing any good for the business, so I've got to try to, I don't want to get rid of you, I want you to stay, I want you to be part of the team. But it's hard, because most people they get to a point where it's just like, I don't care anymore, so you can do whatever you want to me. And it's like, oh my goodness sakes. Okay. But one thing that, I want to set basically the record straight. If you're going into management to receive a bunch of accolades, a bunch of awards, trophies, and everything else there, for the most part, that's the wrong reason to go into it, because as a manager, you really don't get a lot of positive praise or anything. I rarely ever even got a thank you from my bosses. It was extremely rare. I might get one or two a year. The only thing I got there was, if there was no news, to me that was the best thing that you could do, because they weren't screaming at me of why we weren't making budget, or why didn't we make projections, or why didn't we make enough money, or why didn't we process enough, or anything like this. And the anytime that you hear from your upper bosses, it's never good. There's just not there. So, take that into account if you think you're going to get into management and you think you're going to be sitting on a throne there and treated like a king. It doesn't happen. At least never in any of my management experiences and people that I've worked with for management, it has never happened. Just take that into account before you accept the position. But for me, like I said before, I was a manager first in, last out. I always wanted to be there for my team, do whatever I could to build them up, help them out. So leading into that, there's been a lot that I've talked about here in this podcast so far. But if I was to break down some of the reasons why I think introverts make the best managers, here are some of the thoughts that I have. These are just ones that ran across my brain. We're extremely compassionate. We have lots of empathy. We know what it's like to go through in the rough times. So we don't want to see them struggle. So we do everything we can to support them and help them through that process. I think introverts are extremely compassionate, and that's one of our accolades. That's one of our benefits, and that's one of the good things you get out of us. We are people persons. We know how to work with people and build them up. I was always really good at that, and I still am to this day. And obviously, I'm doing a podcast trying to build you up. I just think that it's a good thing. There's too many things that tear us down anymore. And I think introverts, that's one thing that we excel at, is we're people persons. I know that sounds funny, because you think, well, you're always closed off. You're always, keeping to yourself. You're very snobbish. Well, nothing could be further from the truth. Granted, now when I walked out and I punched out and I went home for the day, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I didn't want to be around anybody. I didn't want to do anything. I didn't want to make any decisions, nothing. But while I was at work and in that position, I was there for my team. And there was plenty of times that my team would either text or call me after hours with questions, or something was bothering them, and I would help them. But from the moment that I walked out the door, I was done. I'd used up all my words for the day. I'd used up everything, all my patience, everything there to get through the day. And I just needed to recharge myself and disconnect from everybody. But overall, we're people persons. I mean, I honestly think that. I think we're very strong leaders. We have the ability to listen and lead a team to success, all while maintaining focus but staying humble. We're not interested in having lots of plaques hanging on the wall, or something come across the company website or whatever saying there that, hey, you did a great job and everything else. If you wanted to thank me, the best thing that you can do is either call me personally and say thank you for the job that you did, or send me a personal email, and that's it. Don't make it company-wide. Don't make it... I've never gotten into that. I don't like the spotlight on me, and I've always done everything I can to stay out of the spotlight. And that's the way introverts are. We want to do a good job, and we are strong leaders because we're compassionate and we're people persons, and we have lots of empathy. That's what makes us the best there. We typically know everything about our jobs. We're typically really, really good at them. We're very efficient at them, mainly because we're always thinking, we're always looking for ways of making it better, or, anything just to basically make the job faster, more efficient, and better. We're actually pretty good at that. Not all introverts are, of course, but for the most part, I think the managers in the introverts that step into management, I think they are. They're great at problem solving. They're great at, they have good job skills. They know the job that they're managing. That makes all a big difference, and I think that's another reason why introverts make the best managers. And this one here is going to probably blow you away, and let me explain it a little bit before you go, okay, Sean, you've fallen off your chair, you hit your head, something's wrong. This is no way that this is true, but it is, and I'm living proof of it. Contrary to popular belief, introverts make great public speakers. That is because we only do this when we know exactly what we're talking about and what we're comfortable doing. As long as we get enough time to prep for it, make our notes, and get our outlines in place and think about what we wanted to say, introverts are fantastic speakers. I mean, there have been presidents that are introverts. There are CEOs that are introverts. I know a personal CEO that's an introvert, but he's great in public speaking. He's good when he needs to be. He steps up to the plate, and he's good with customers and stuff. And that's the way we are. We're very, very compassionate, and I think that's one of our strengths. One of our huge strengths is just being compassionate. But when I can stand in front of a group of people. When I know exactly what I'm talking about, or I'm training somebody, I have no problem standing up in front of these people and working with them. But the moment that the training and everything else is done, I want to crawl back under and just hide for a while, because, okay, I've used up all my extrovert powers and I have nothing left. And it's like, okay, I'm done. But I have done seminars, I have done trainings, I have done teachings, you name it, I've done it. As long as I'm prepped and ready to go and I have notes and I understand what I'm talking about, and so that way if people ask me questions, I can answer them honestly, then I'm okay. It's kind of like my podcast here. Everything I talk about is stuff I have been through, I have done, I understand, I have tried. None of it's made up. I'm not going through and searching the internet and just making stuff up while talking on the podcast. Everything that I talk about, I have done. I've been down that road. I've got the hash marks, and that's why I feel comfortable talking to everybody. Even though I'm not standing up in front of you, it still takes a lot to put yourself on being recorded and putting yourself out there. It's still very, very difficult because there's always people that are going to tear you down, and they're going to either make fun of you or say, well, you don't know what you're talking about. All this stuff that I do, I feel comfortable with, and that's why I talk to you. If I don't feel comfortable about it, I'm not going to talk about it. That's just the way I am. We're always willing to learn and be the best that we absolutely can be. As I've had plenty of managers that help train me and do the right thing, and I'm even a better person and a better employee. And then I've had other managers that throw the book at you and say, here, you figure it out. I don't want to deal with this anymore. And I handle constructive criticism very well. Introverts can, just don't overwhelm us, don't come in screaming at us, because then all you're going to do is get us to shut down. But that's one thing that I've learned is we're always willing to learn, always learning to, new part of the business, new way of doing things, where that helps. Big changes to us will overwhelm us and will scare us, no doubt about that one there. But that's going to be pretty much anybody on this planet. Is when you're talking about big changes, major changes, that overwhelms everybody, because it's like, okay, what do we do now? How do we handle this? What if? And everybody starts to freak out a little bit. And introverts are even worse, because we're just, because it's like we like being, figuring it out, having an answer. I always like having 3 or 4 options to each question, each possibility. So in case something happens, I can try this. this or try this or try this or try this, and I'm not overwhelmed. That's what helps me is I always have options. I always have a decision. I've always got, a different angle on it. So if this way doesn't work, okay, well, we know this road doesn't work. Let's go down this road and let's try this one. And that's what helps me stay stable and be the best leader that I can be. Is I've always got a game plan. I've always got something figured out. I've always got a backup plan. That's one thing that I'm really, really good at by taking care of my team and my people. So the last thing that I pretty much want to talk about, and you can take these as is. You don't have to listen to any of them. You don't have to do any of them. But one thing that I'd like to share with you is basically some tips, whether you're a current manager or you're thinking about becoming a new manager, or if you're even considering management. These are some of the things that I have learned the hard way about going through management, and I'm hoping maybe it'll help you. One of the biggest things is never ask anyone to do something that you're unwilling to do yourself. If you're not willing to take out the trash, if you're not willing there to talk to this customer, you're not willing to do this work, then don't ask other people to do it. That just to me is a best way to destroy morale, and for the trust that they're going to have in you will instantly leave. So never ask anybody to do something you're unwilling to do yourself. Never reprimand an employee in front of others. Always do that in private. I can't stress that enough. If you have to talk to them, do your best to keep it positive, and always try to turn the negatives into a positive. Somehow it's like, okay, if you did this, if you were to do it this way, you're going to get a better response out of it. It's going to be easier. It's going to be more in the company's guidelines to do it this way, and it'll actually be easier. We've been down that road. So always try to find a way to turn it into a positive, but never ever reprimand an employee in front of others. Always take time to listen to your employees. I can't stress that enough. There's so many managers out there that just absolutely will not listen to their employees. And it's not just listen. If it's a good idea, put it into place. Start using it, letting them know that this worked. Hey, thank you for this. This is fantastic. We're now going to change everything and do it that way. Take the time to listen to your employees. Always ask your team, and this is one thing, whenever I hired somebody during the interview process, their first day, their first week, their second week, their third week, is always ask your team for ideas and options and then put them into practice if you can do it. Of course, not every idea they come up you're going to be able to do, but make sure you always thank them for the ideas, and if it's not going to work, tell them why it doesn't work in a nice way. Don't be condescending, don't be a jerk, don't talk down to them. Because if they're coming to you with ideas, that means they care about the job and they care about their position, and do what you can to protect that. So, thank them for that. And if they do submit a great idea, then let them know that too. Give them something to say thank you for it. I would always, give I'd give them the day off with pay, or whatever I could come up with. I would treat them to lunch or something there. Or if on the extreme rare occasion that the boss would allow me to give them a bonus, I would give them a bonus. But that was extremely rare because he didn't like handing out money, so it made it really difficult. Celebrate employee accomplishments to help them do that. I would do with my team years of service. Every time that they would do it, I would always have I'd go out and spend $60-$70 on food, and I would have a nice award made up for them, and I made sure that it was on the day of their anniversary, and I always did it in front of everybody, saying thank you for 3 years of service. You have been fantastic. These are, thank you for always being here. Thank you for being on time. And then I always had a bunch of food, and I always tried to tailor it to stuff that they liked, so that way it made them feel better. That way they knew that they were valued. You could also do it on promotions or whatever it is. You could tailor it to your own job, into your own business to do it. But I found that's huge, just celebrating employee accomplishments, especially years of service, to nail it on the nose and to let them know. I'd let them know if they were okay with it. I'd say happy birthday. I personally don't like people when they say that, but other people do. So I always had on my calendar, I always had their dates of when the birthday was and stuff. So I always made sure I told them. Be a leader, not a manager. And someday, I'll probably really expand into this in another podcast, but there is huge differences between a leader and a manager, and we've talked about them today. So, go back and listen to podcasts there. But remember, a leader is going to be in with their team, and a manager is going to be sitting on his throne, overlooking everything, just telling people what to do. Never talk down to anyone. That is huge. Don't make people feel like idiots. Do whatever you can to build them up. You can always talk to them about negative things in a positive way. And then the more you do that, the more you're going to build your team, the more you're going to build the respect from your team, and it'll help you. Keep a distance from your employees. It's harder to do your job when they're your friends and not your employees. I hate thinking it that way, but when you have to make the tough decisions, say like you have to reprimand them or terminate them, if you're hanging out, going to the bars together, going out to restaurants together, hanging out on weekends, to fire that person is going to be almost impossible. They're going to get away with murder. You always have to maintain something of a manager-employee gap, basically, there. You always have to keep yourself away to some point so you can stay, more objective. Otherwise, it could be you going down the road if you're not going to make the big decisions. I walk around and give out compliments saying, good job, good thinking, hey, nice work, you got this done easy, or faster, early, ahead of time, whatever it is. I don't just give them out freely, but if they've earned them, I make sure that everybody hears it, and I make sure they get a compliment. And if I don't have time, I send out like a department email saying, hey, great job, this is what we accomplished, I'm proud of you guys. Whatever it is, I just let them know that they're doing a great job. No matter what the stress level or problems or the world burning down or anything is, make sure as a manager you keep yourself even keel. You can't go out there screaming and yelling. You can't be stressed out. You can't be running around yelling and cussing and swearing and all that stuff, because all that does is put your team on edge. No matter what, literally, you could be on the Titanic, it's going down, and you have to sit there and keep an even keel, level head, level voice, no tone, and it's like, okay, we got this, we'll figure this out, we're going to survive, and whatever, to keep your team going. And that's a huge thing, because it helps them, because you give them the stability to keep going. I found that out there, and that's why basically the way I'm talking now, that's the way my management is. No matter what was going on, that's pretty much what it was. It rarely changed, and it helped my team out. Probably one of the biggest things there is never discuss pay and bonuses with anybody but the employee, and that is done in private. I've had to let people go because they have talked about their wages after I told them not to. That is a huge deterrent when it comes to management. Not everybody makes the same money. That's just the way it is. It depends on how well they are, length of service, promotions, all that stuff. That all goes into it. So when you hear somebody else making more money, that's just going to upset the employee that's not making as much, and they won't understand why that employee is making more. So just make sure that you never discuss pay and bonuses. Never. I don't know if there's anything more detrimental to your team and to your management style than that. So that's just something that I've learned, and make sure that you just never do. But with all of this information that I've come across with you today, when all said and done, I think one of the greatest advantages that introverts have is their ability to listen and have empathy. I think that's probably one of our strongest management strengths that we have, and I think that's why introverts probably make the best managers, because they're not out there screaming, they're not out there making people feel bad or anything like that. It all comes down to basically just listening to your team, being there for them, support them, always uphold them, always be positive, and you'd be surprised on how much more these people will enjoy coming to work and how much more that they will be there for you. Just listening is a huge thing. You don't have to. I know I've had my fair share of managers that run around. They talk as loud as they can. They yell all the time. They're saying bad things. They're tearing you down in front of customers and stuff. And I just made sure that I was never that way. I took all the negative things that all my other bosses were, and I turned them into positives and said, okay, I'm not going to do this because this is how it made me feel, and I'm just not going to do them. I'm going to be a better person and a better manager, and that's just the way I am. And so far, 30 years of management later, it's served me well. And then that's about all I've got to offer on this podcast. But just, I guess the final thing, that if I'm going to say anything, be the manager you wish you had. Take the negatives that they did, turn them into a positive for you, and see what they were doing wrong. And just make sure you don't repeat that, because if it bothered you or you saw it bother other people, well, more than likely it's not going to work. It's not a good thing. So make sure you don't do it as a manager. But then when you figure that out, be a leader. Be there for your team. Be a part of them. Like I said, first in, last out. That's probably one of the biggest things that I was always ringing in my head is always being there. I was always there early. I always stayed late to make sure that my team were okay. Everything was in place. And I got good results. I still have amazing people that I talk to that I got to work with. And I consider myself lucky. They're incredible people, and I miss working with them. I'm no longer at that business. So, but okay, well, I see by the time on the computer that I'm out of time here. So I figured, you know what? Oh, guess what? We're going to end this here with the normal dad joke of the day. So thank you for listening. Thank you for everything else here. I appreciate everything that you're doing by sharing, liking, subscribing, commenting, everything that you can do. But you're still not going to get away from the dad joke of the day. So ending the podcast, here we go. Do you know why spiders are so smart? Because they can find everything on the web. Let the groaning and the eye rolls begin. They just get better and better, don't they, as we go on here. So, thank you so much there. I appreciate you guys listening there. I appreciate everything that you do to support me. And as always, all my love and support